If you enjoyed this video, consider supporting the Patreon. Link down in the description.
Death Battle is a lot of things. It's flawed, for sure, with a history of episodes across its over 10 years online that range from peak fiction to absolute garbage. As I said in my first Death Battle video, which was accidentally over an hour long, like I'm being so for real, that was not intentional, even though it's kind of commonplace for me on here. Anyway, Death Battle is a show that some people love, some people cannot stand, and most people just know exists, and that's the end of their relationship with it. You know, exactly what I said in that first one. But if there's one thing everyone with even a passing knowledge of Death Battle knows about it, it's that the debate of Goku versus Superman rages on, and has raged on since Season 1's finale back in 2013. Season 1 started in December of 2010, and ended in January of 2013 with this legendary episode ending its 25 episode run. Well, 24 if you're not counting the mistake. The original Goku vs. Superman is, for lack of a better word, the best episode of Season 1. Not a super high bar, but the point stands. The analysis sections feel very well made, especially for the time in which it was made, with a lot of effort put into sifting through things like mistranslations and misunderstandings to come to the best conclusion possible at the time. They actively acknowledge that power levels are a pointless thing to focus on with Goku, given how, time and time again, we were shown that it meant nothing for him in his story, especially in some of his toughest battles. And Boomstick, of all people, avoids making a joke about Superman's glasses disguise and instead acknowledges that while it may seem like a nothing disguise that anyone should be able to see through, people only really see what they want to see, so they never see the dorky, clumsy Clark Kent as Superman, even though they physically look very similar. You could tell by watching the analysis sections that they truly cared, more than any other episode before this one, to get the best and most fair result possible. And this makes sense given this is one of those matchups, the legendary type of versus debates that have existed for years, predating the show itself, like Mario versus Sonic, or Ryu versus Scorpion, or Batman versus kind of just anyone, if I'm being 100% real. You know, that kind of thing. I love how the analysis sections tie into one another. They bring up how Ki is a distinctly different thing from magic in Goku's analysis before then going into greater detail about it. And then, later on in Superman's analysis, they point out how he has no special resistance to magic. This is smart because if someone had thought Ki was magic, they'd use this kind of point to argue in Goku's favor. So doing this distinctly has the opposite effect because it's already in your mind that Ki is not magic. Also, this was back when the analysis sections ended with clips for the characters, and using Goku's ally to good, nightmare to you speech to end his section was already a banger move, but ending Clark's section with the world made of cardboard scene is even better. In a way, they feel kind of poetic, like having these two characters reflect each other. Goku's end clip being a big, heroic, Superman-like speech against a villain, while Superman's clip is about him having this rare opportunity to cut loose in a fight, which is a reverse of what Goku's usual life is like, since he's usually always going all out in a fight and never really holding back. It even sort of works as foreshadowing for the fight itself. Speaking of which, the little abridged opening segment is something I actually forgot was in this episode until rewatching it recently. It's actually kind of charming in that old internet sort of way, and it makes sense when you have Team 4 Star's involvement in this episode. I even like how Goku's happy to have found someone as strong as him, even though I feel that part is a little soiled by his reaction to finding out that Superman's an alien, but that has no real actual effect on the fight animation, so it's whatever, I can ignore that. But to explain it, they have this weird line of Goku saying that it's only a matter of time before Clark destroys the planet, and then he runs off on Nimbus to find Superman. But this attitude of urgency never returns, because in the actual fight animation, Goku introduces himself to Superman with a more in-character, "you look pretty strong, wanna fight?" type attitude. And I prefer that. I'm actually really glad the fight animation just ignores that weird setup from the abridged section. The fight animation itself surprises me. Mainly because... okay. Cards on the table. I don't like Lang. Outside of a handful of episodes like He-Man vs. Lion-O or Ryu Hayabusa vs. Strider Hiryu, I think most of his fights look bad. Episodes like the original Link vs. Cloud are like the absolute worst examples of this. That all said, being fair, I think Goku vs. Superman 1 might just be his best work on the show. It's not perfect, the usual jank that his work had is present here, but I think the pacing of this fight, paired with the characterization from the writing team, really helps make it. The scene with the back and forth between the two of them with the power pole is a highlight for me, even if it is such a small bit from such a larger fight. I like that Superman makes an effort to leave the city when too much damage is happening around them. I like that Goku destroys the kryptonite when he realizes it's hurting Superman because he wants a fair fight. I like how this was foreshadowed earlier with him offering Clark a sensu beam. The dialogue, while simple, is also nice, with great performances from Masako X and Just Some Random Guy as Goku and Superman respectively. It's not the perfect characterization, still feels a bit too antagonistic at points, like Clark going, "I was wondering when you'd run out of hairstyles," or Clark's, "You think this is a game? I haven't even begun to play." But both lines are delivered well, regardless of whether or not I feel like they're in character for Clark. I don't have a lot more to say about the original overall, but the point is, the fight's good, easily the best of Season 1, and it's not even all that close. It's a great step in the right direction and would, as we know now, over 10 years into the future, be just the beginning for this show, and this fight specifically. The ending of this episode, after the epilogue analysis where they do a bunch of measurements and equations to elaborate on how they got the result they did, is honestly something that I still really love. Wiz says that in the end, numbers cannot measure what Goku and Superman are capable of. They are both ultimate heroes, solutions to daunting problems, and achievers of the impossible, and then goes on to say that the difference comes down to the core of their characters. Goku's stories are about having limits and surpassing them. He's never been invincible, as Wiz puts it. He's always trying to get stronger, to go beyond what was previously his best. His stories are those of self-improvement and betterment. Meanwhile, Superman has never really been fighting to become the best like Goku. Superman is someone who is as strong as he needs to be. His struggles have never been about achieving greater power or being stronger, but rather, they're more internal. Under the power of the sun, Superman's powers are almost limitless. So his stories have always been focused more on the struggles that don't relate to seeking power. He's a symbol of hope, but he's not perfect. He's not without fault. He's not without flaw either. He struggled with his identity when finding out about his origin, struggling between the home he's always known and the heritage that he came from, Krypton. Eventually, he finds a balance, recognizing that while he may be from another planet, his home is Earth. And that balance is what makes him Superman. These are two characters with decades of histories, decades of stories, and that means a lot to a lot of people, myself included. Superman winning here came down to the fact that he's a man with no limits going up against a man who is always fighting to break his limits. As Wiz puts it, only one has limits to give at all, and that's Goku. There's a respect and admiration for both of them throughout this whole video, despite how different they are, and it's exceptionally respectful and careful, never calling one better than the other as a character. Simply putting forward why one won over the other in this fight. These are all claims, all traits that I wish I could say about the second time they covered this fight. Because in 2015, in the middle of Season 2, they do this again, but they do it way worse. Most likely motivated by Goku getting a new form fairly recently at the time. You know, the skinny red one, Super Saiyan God. And I don't know the reason why. I don't know how it turned out this way. But Goku vs. Superman 2 is really, really bad. Like, really bad. Nemesis Bloodreich really hit the nail on the head back in 2021 when he talked about just what made this battle suck. I.e., the fact that there's a very heavy bias that pulsates from this episode throughout its entire runtime. And that bias is not towards the winner, Superman. No. That bias is towards Goku. My theory personally is that this was done because despite all the effort put into the original episode to avoid being disrespectful to either combatant, A lot of Dragon Ball fans were not happy with the original episode, and the reason why this is my theory is because the third outing that happened years after this one shows me that there is a mutual respect for both characters, and the original episode from 2013 also showed this. So I don't believe for a second that this bias was something genuine on their end. I could be wrong, but if I am, then I don't know how we got here. Goku vs. Superman 2, which was rightfully renamed to the irrelevant sequel before they changed that to the original sequel, has its ending statement be similar to the one from 2013. The whole, this fight comes down to a man who is always breaking his limits versus the one with no limits speech from the original, even including similar visual editing on screen. But then, there's a new segment that's just kind of stapled onto it that just makes it worse. Because the section they add is about how this is why people like Goku, how it makes him a likable and memorable character, with Boomstick even chiming in that if you had a Goku as strong as Superman, would you even want him? All but outright saying that they view Goku as a better character because of his limits and struggle, while basically dismissing all the merit and value that Superman's character has. Like I said, they've got different struggles because of their characters, because of who they are, but neither is just outright a better character or anything like that. But here, for some reason, the Goku glazing is cranked up, and it reads to me as a cheap way to try and get Goku fans off their backs. And then there's just shit like this.
Superman is an all-powerful being who is only weak to alien radiation and supernatural magic. He is not meant to be relatable. He is not meant to lose.
Which shows that somehow, and I don't know how, Death Battle lost all understanding of Superman as a character. You cannot, in good faith, claim that Superman is not supposed to be relatable. Because yeah, he's got this godlike power, but he's not some inhuman god or some unfeeling being that distances himself from humanity. He's not Dr. Manhattan, who lost his humanity and grew distant to the people he used to be a part of. And that's no disrespect to Manhattan, by the way. He's an excellently written character in his own right, but he's not Superman, and Superman's not him, and that's why that one Watchmen sequel comic kind of fucking sucks, by the way, but that's not relevant to this conversation. Superman is Clark Kent first and foremost. He was raised on Earth by two humble farmers from the Kansas countryside. He works a regular-ass job despite his amazing powers and skills. He's someone who is gifted with great power and then takes that opportunity to be a helper. This is why characters like Homelander are interesting in this discussion, because they show us just how truly good of a person Superman is, because he was given this immense power and chose to be greater, to do what's right simply for the sake of it. Meanwhile, someone like Homelander was given a fraction of that and became a tyrant. Not only does it make Homelander an interesting character, but it makes Superman even more interesting, because now you have a frame of reference, a comparison point that makes you really think about who Clark is, and it makes you really appreciate the person that he is. It's also why stuff like Injustice is just a massive spit in the face to who Superman is as well. Because that's not who Clark is. Clark isn't someone who'd give in to his own despair and decide to make it the problem of everyone else. Clark is someone who, when faced with hardship and suffering, when put at the end of his rope, decides to pull himself back up and continue being who he is because he knows what's right. And yeah, Goku is inspiring because he pushes through his physical limits and faces new challenges head on. He's constantly working on himself day in and day out to be the best that he can be, then continues to work even harder to surpass that. I cannot and will not deny that, especially when evidence to this fact is out in the open for anyone to see. So many people are inspired by Goku. Hell, I think Goku's inspiring. But that doesn't mean Superman isn't inspiring as well, or interesting, or even relatable. Someone who has the opportunity to do good, and even without any type of reward or even any reason outside of it's the right thing to do, just does what is right. I like to think that the average person, if given the same power Superman is given, would know the right thing to do, would go out and try to help people that can't help themselves. That's what I believe. And even then, having these great talents doesn't stop Superman from being relatable. In the same way that Goku having the talents that he does doesn't stop him from being relatable. And it doesn't stop several other characters that are just as powerful as these two from also being relatable in their own right. And then there's also that claim in this episode that Superman's not meant to lose, and that's also just really fucking wrong and stupid. Like, Superman has lost. Many times, in fact. In fact, he's lost at points that Death Battle is aware of. Like Lois's death in Superman the movie, where he literally thinks to himself, all those things that I can do and I couldn't even save her. Before then, despite warning, deciding to fly around the Earth to rewind time and save her. Another example being his death at the hands of Doomsday, something Death Battle directly mentioned in the original Goku vs. Superman, and even cracked a joke about that in the same video, because it was later revealed he was just in a healing coma. But even if he didn't actually die, he still lost. The idea that somehow Superman is some perfect Boy Scout with no character is a take that people constantly throw around, and it's always by people who've never picked up a comic or watched a show or watched a movie about Superman. Like, it is not that hard to find things that disprove that claim. Goku vs. Superman 2 is such a bad episode and such a fucking downgrade from the original episode. The analysis sections are worse because when it isn't the Superman section hammering in the fact that, for some reason, 2015 Death Battle just didn't understand Superman's character, it's just boring. Like, the most interesting aspect of this episode to me is how hilariously wrong they are about Superman and how frustrated that makes me. Because nothing in the fight stands out either. It's weird how I can tell that the animation quality is better, quote unquote, than the original, but it's just a worse fight for me to actually sit through. I don't know, it just lacks the character that I liked in that original episode. Like, the only standout moment in this fight for me is the death, where after Clark essentially Thanos snaps Goku's brain, he takes the time to catch Goku's falling corpse and floats him down to the ground. That is the only moment that really feels like Superman is being represented here. Him respecting his opponent as a living being even after killing him. That is it. That is the highlight of this fight. Otherwise, this is just a terrible episode. Also, this isn't as big a deal as anything else I've talked about, but I don't like that they used the New 52 design for Clark, because I don't like when Superman designs lack the trunks. It's kind of a me thing, and that's too subjective for me to really harp on, but I did want to mention it. Also, the fight's rendering, I don't know what it is, but something about it looks off. Like they look too shiny or something, and I can't really put my finger on what exactly makes it look so bad to me. Like, the original fight definitely looked low budget, right? Like, Goku vs. Superman 1 was very clearly low budget Season 1 Death Battle, but Goku vs. Superman 2 reminds me of early 360 and PS3 games. You know, where they were basically just 6th gen games, but like with HD textures slapped on them haphazardly. You know how like a lot of early PS3 and 360 licensed games like Kung Fu Panda, for example, just sort of look like PS2 games with HD texture packs thrown on them? Yeah, a lot of early HD era licensed games all had that problem, and this episode shares that look for some reason. And like, you know, no disrespect to the animator, Torian. Guy's done fantastic work on the show, and I'm also aware that he's, end of the day, a human being, and I don't know the context in which this animation was made. No hate to him, obviously. And hell, there are other episodes from Season 2 that I think look bad visually, like RoboCop vs. Terminator, that are still pretty solid fights and episodes with that in mind. Hell, 2 seasons later, Megazord vs. Voltron would also be animated by Torian, and its jank models for the pilots and rangers did not take away from how awesome that episode's fight was. An episode can look kinda bad visually and still be saved if the fight choreography and animation is still good. But there's just something about Goku vs. Superman 2's fight where it just doesn't work for me. Maybe it's the fact that the choreography is kind of mid, and thus it's hard for me to, you know, ignore stuff like the animation not looking good from a visual standpoint, and it's, you know, probably not helped that everything outside of the fight animation is also not good. You know, just this episode's not good in a general sense. It's not a good episode. I have very few nice things to say about it. and it's just a disappointing entry in this trilogy. Like, the Goku vs. Superman trilogy is a trilogy, and I think it's without a doubt a fact that Goku vs. Superman 2 is the worst one of the three. And after this, that was kind of it for Goku vs. Superman on Death Battle. For a while, anyway. You know, I'm kind of thankful they didn't feel the need to do it over and over again every season whenever Goku got a new form or anything, but like, this episode, for a while, left the debates, in terms of context with Death Battle anyway, off on a pretty upsetting note. Not just for me, but for other people. It didn't really please anyone. Goku fans were still mad because they felt like Goku got screwed over because he lost, and Superman fans weren't exactly happy with the constant disrespect towards a character they loved. And, you know, me being a fan of both of them, my opinion is what I said for the last several minutes, so you know. But then, at the end of Rick Sanchez versus the Doctor, we'd get the announcement for the next episode, the one that would follow it. And that was revealed to be Goku versus Superman, for a third time. And it was set to release December 4th of 2023. Many people, myself included admittedly, weren't exactly thrilled in this moment, seeing it as a pointless retread. Some people hoped they'd finally see Goku win one of these, and they dreaded a third win for Superman. While my main concern was that it wouldn't do enough to justify being made at all, like a typical AAA remake of a game from 10 to 20 years ago. And boy, was I wrong about that. The third time I was wrong between the two seasons, actually. Because when Silver vs. Trunks was announced, I was not happy then, because I always hated that matchup. But after I learned that it was specifically Archie Silver versus Zeno Trunks, I changed my tune and got excited. And the final result was glorious. Easily the best Sonic episode of Death Battle. And one of the best Dragon Ball episodes of Death Battle as well. Then there was when Courage vs. Scooby was announced, because I was very scared that I'd have to watch Scooby die, or I'd have to watch Courage die. I didn't want either of those, to be honest. That's a very uncomfortable thought. But I came out of that episode considering it perfect for literally both of those characters. Season 9 and Season 10, as a whole, really feel like such a brilliant return to form for Death Battle as a show. And it's a new high for the series in terms of overall quality, especially in terms of writing and presentation. Something that I feel we started to see the signs of in Season 8 with episodes like Saitama vs. Popeye and King Mickey vs. Master Yoda, which were both excellent episodes. But Season 8 still had its growing pains. My hot take that Alucard vs. Dio isn't good aside, Madara vs. Aizen was yet another Naruto vs. Bleach episode where it felt like the Naruto character was given the edge, while the Bleach character seemingly didn't account for the 1,000-year blood war. A problem that Naruto vs. Ichigo also had, despite Ichigo using his design from that arc. But overall, Season 8 was already showing signs of the show getting better. And then Season 9 and Season 10 just blew all those expectations out of the water. And sure, they're not perfect seasons. Episodes like Boba Fett vs. John Yalcha or Megatron vs. Frieza aren't all that great. But they're outweighed by all the banger episodes that these two seasons have. Hell, I've kind of come around on Tetsuo vs. Magneto the more I sit on it. Slowly, my expectations with Death Battle were turning pretty positive after years of feeling like the show had fallen into a slump. Goku vs. Superman 3 was what solidified that I loved this show. Plenty of banger episodes have built up to this moment. Silver vs. Trunks, Guts vs. Dimitri, Scooby vs. Courage, Cole vs. Alex, SpongeBob vs. Aquaman, and Bill vs. Discord, among a few others. So eventually, December 4th, 2023 came, and it released. Starting with the analysis sections, what a massive return to form from 2015's horrible outing. Makes sense, since, honestly, these have only been getting better since Season 2, and have reached a pretty good place by Season 9 and 10. Editing is a lot better on these two as well, as are Wiz and Boomstick as characters. Like the little moment where Boomstick talks about how senzu beans can restore lost limbs, and then he notices Wiz looking at his robot arm all depressed. So then, he quickly about-faces and goes, "They're missing out," as a way to almost comfort his friend. You know, little stuff like that, it's nice to see, and it really gives character to the host, so they're more than just funny voices that give us the stats and feats in the analysis sections. These are nice moments that people who don't skip the analysis sections get to see. Hell, even though I've kind of grown tired of Dragon Ball analysis sections on this show, due to them feeling pretty repetitive at this point, but much like how Xenotrunks benefited from being a specific canon, Goku benefited from having so many things unique to him, like Ultra Instinct, which benefit his analysis section. We kind of get a timeline of what Goku's been through, showing us how far he's come and highlighting how his story shows that no matter the challenge, he's willing to push through and go further beyond, highlighting what makes Goku so beloved and how he inspired so many people with his story. But what really makes me happy more than anything else is Superman's analysis, like them outright rejecting the notion that Clark is just a perfect Boy Scout, with Boomstick even being the one to say that. And Wiz bringing up the history of his creation, with Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, two Jewish men who grew up in a time where anti-Semitism was unfortunately rampant and common. They bring up how, in a way, Superman was created as a form of escapism, a hero with immense power who fought against oppression in the name of the oppressed. He was a symbol of hope. They bring up how in the decades he's existed, he's been so many things, but then they focus on the core of who he is across all of that. Someone from a distant land, raised on Earth, a new world that accepted him rather than feared him, and thus, that love and acceptance led to Clark Kent, who would become Superman, someone who does what is right simply because it's the right thing to do. Superman's analysis is such a far cry from 2015's outing, with a constant air of respect and love for the character. They even address the complicated nature of trying to power scale him, since his powers and what he can do has fluctuated over the years, before addressing that they take characters on this show at their best. But my favorite bit is pointing out what makes him such a beloved character. How he's the kind of person that do even the smallest act of good, like answer thousands of Christmas cards or save a cat from a tree, because it's not just the big saving the world feats that matter. Even the smallest act of good is more than enough, because there's no act of good too small to ignore. As Boomstick puts it brilliantly, truth and justice has no better champion than the Man of Steel. The analysis section in this episode, in general, has all the positives of the first episode's analysis sections, but with the added bonuses that come from the years of improvement that the show has been doing. Better narration, better visual editing, better scripting, the whole 9 yards, and it's kind of great, and an excellent way to show how far the show has come since those early days. I know a lot of people who skip these parts of episodes, but I've always liked watching them, even at their worst, because I feel like they give context for how they come to their conclusions. For example, imagine skipping, say, Trunks vs. Silver's analysis sections and then getting mad that Trunks lost, even though it makes sense when you take into account what they were given in the logic presented in the analysis sections. Imagine doing that. Speaking of which, here's the fight, which is so damn good. There's so much to love about this. For instance, the scale of it is so insane, and a brilliant reflection of how far Death Battle has come in terms of production value. This had multiple animators working on it, and it shows. Every single name on this list deserves a round of fucking applause for their work. Goku and Superman both look amazing in this episode, and I know Clark's using his Fortnite design, but I honestly think it looks better here than it does in that game. Mainly because the colors are brighter and the obnoxious lines across the blue aren't anywhere near as noticeable. The choreography is top notch with all these little details that truly make it feel like it's Goku and Superman fighting. Like at the start of the fight, after the bit where they're zipping around at the speed that we can barely follow, Goku does his little spin with a smile on his face as the camera pans to a charging Superman. I love how happy you can tell Goku is in this fight. Goku decides to meet Superman halfway and charges forward himself, leading into that slick fighter's nod. And notice how, as they look at each other in this clash, they're smiling at one another, but in subtly different ways. Goku looks like he's just living in this moment, living for the excitement. And Clark looks pleased. It's nice because Goku has the energy of an excited kid, and Clark has the energy of a proud father happy to be there, to be a part of this moment, in such a wholesome and non-condescending way. There's the bit after their first dialogue exchange where Clark flies forward, and then Goku counters it by flipping over him. Clark's face at first is one of surprise, but then it shifts to this little smirk, the kind you give an old friend when they do something that's so them. We then see Goku smiling back, a little heh from him, before he delivers his true counterattack of a kick that just sends Clark flying. So many moments in the fight itself go so hard. Again, all these animators here, they did so well. I also want to highlight the sound design here. It really sells everything, including the sheer scale of these two fighting. We know from past episodes like Broly vs. Hulk that lacking good sound design can very much hurt an episode in this regard. So I'm thankful Goku vs. Superman 3 lacks that problem. I love how Goku's transitions into other forms always has weight and impact, like him shifting from Super Saiyan to Blue is given this quick yet impactful moment, accented by the sound effect, the scream, and even the camera work. Him immediately going from transforming to an attack that allows him to transition into a Kamehameha is also fantastic. I love how consistently this fight shows how easy it is for these two to keep up with one another, and how much they just love that. That brilliant pacing the original episode had is here too. The fight always feels like it's going at just the right pace. And that music, that music, it's so perfectly paired with the fight, rising and falling at the right moments to complement the fight and its progression. Brandon Yates ate with this track. Absolutely no crumbs, without a fucking doubt. I also love how this fight characterizes Goku and Superman as old friends who have met before and know each other. It's almost like the last two episodes are kind of canon in a way. Really helps sell that this is a grand finale to a trilogy, not just in real life, but for them within the fiction of Death Battle. Goku saying they'll finally find out who's stronger implies that this is something he's wanted to know forever. Clark responding with that casual, "if you say so," also nicely conveys their friendship to the audience. It really sells this friendship to you. I like that Goku shouts, "You're holding back! Give it your all!" Because he can tell Clark's holding back. And we know Goku prefers fighting people at their strongest. I like that as he spins Clark around, and before he throws him into a bunch of trees, he exclaims, "No regrets!" With Clark, upon sticking the landing, responding with, "I'm doing just fine," which leads to that blue transformation that I talked about earlier. That part in space at the midway point with Clark accidentally destroying a moon while deflecting one of Goku's blasts is also just really great. Goku just sort of goes, "Whoops! Well, we can wish them back with the Dragon Balls," and Clark takes a moment to reflect. He spent his whole life living in a world made of cardboard. He has to hold back 24/7, or he risks hurting everyone. But here, in this moment, he has that rare opportunity to cut loose. But unlike with Darkseid, the fate of the world isn't at stake. No, this time cutting loose means something different. It means he gets to relax, to have some fun without the fear of consequences. Also, when he gains a newfound resolve here, this resolve that he can just really let loose and give it his all, he states that he'll now show Goku just how powerful he really is. This moment, when he says this, the song in the background, Super, plays a guitar riff that's using the leitmotif of Superman the Animated Series' theme song. A song that, in my opinion, perfectly embodies Superman without a single word, entirely through music. Using that leitmotif in this moment is brilliant. It's a clever use of using a distinctly Superman part of the song to emphasize that he's the focus here, to emphasize the rising resolve in him emotionally. I love that. I love when Death Battle eloquently uses storytelling through its medium, through what it is. I also, by the way, love this little chest bounce that Goku has when he says the whole "whoops" line that I mentioned earlier. It's nice. I love how even a small motion like him shifting to a fighting pose has so much life to it. Again, these animators, all of them, look at this list. Brilliance. Absolute 10 out of 10 from all of them. But yeah, after this moment, Clark decides to go all out, and Goku gets so excited. And Clark wasn't kidding, by the way, as now every punch he lands on Goku just reveals another crack through the multiverse. And what do we see to show that? Well, we see Goku and Superman fighting in every possible dimension in every possible way. To make this moment cooler, the first 2 cracks have audio from Masako X and Just Some Random Guy. I hadn't gotten to mention it yet, but this fight has Michael Kovac and Xander Mobus playing Goku and Superman. They're both excellent and brilliantly cast in these roles. Kovac is someone that I'm sure fans of indie animation recognize. He was Angel Dust in the pilot of Has Been Hotel, he's Jax in Digital Circus, and he's in Murder Drones. Xander Mobus, meanwhile, is best known as Joker in Persona 5 and the Smash announcer in Smash Ultimate. Kovac is genuinely my favorite English voice actor for Goku. Like, overall. He beats out both Masako X and Kirby Morrow, may he rest in peace, for that spot, which is stiff competition, to be sure. And that said, I really like that the voices who played these characters on the show all those years ago weren't simply forgotten. They were given the chance to play a part in this amazing finale episode, even if it was in a different way. And when I say finale, I mean to the Goku and Superman trilogy, not to the season. Although this would have been an amazing finale to the season if it was one. I'm honestly pretty nostalgic for both Team 4-Star and Just Some Random Guy's content, and those are things that I have plenty of fond memories of. So I can't pretend that this bit doesn't make me smile for that reason alone, but it also makes me smile because it's nice to see that these two weren't forgotten, that they were still allowed to be a part of this, even if it wasn't in the same way. It's something that I wish MK1 had done when it had an old Raiden show up from a different timeline later on in its story mode. I feel like having him played by Richard Epcar to highlight someone who had played that character for years would have been nice, but he wasn't, and what can you do? But that's another reason why I appreciate that Death Battle did do this. They did highlight the legacy actors of these characters on this show, and that's nice. Anyway, this is the part where it starts ramping up. Clark beating Goku so bad it destroys his clothes. When Clark asks Goku how that was, Goku just sounds so excited. I love how Michael delivers this line. You can just tell that he loved whatever that power-up Superman had was. And he can't help but express just how happy that makes him. He also compliments Clark's suit, noticing how it's still completely intact, and then Clark thanks him while noting that his mom made it for him out of Kryptonian fabric. I also love that his suit, the symbol of Superman, is a meeting ground between his home on Earth and his heritage from Krypton. Really puts what Wiz said back in the first episode into perspective. Also, Clark's reaction to Goku's compliment is really cute and dorky. Big fan of that, as it shows a way better understanding of Clark's character than that awful second episode. The fight really ramps up at this point, including a reference to that one Man of Steel shot that Injustice would reference as well. And when it gets to the climax, Goku's loving it. He lets out this satisfied finally, as it's now his time to reflect. Finally, more than any other moment before, he's against someone truly stronger than him. And he's just living for it. The lyrics of Super during this bit say it all. In this moment, there is no space or time. In this moment, there is only you and I. In this moment, we are free. Watch me come alive. And as they're finally clashing at their absolute peaks, the song lyrics go as follows. I can feel it in my bones, fighting blow for blow. If there's something we should know, it's that we're the strongest known. And I think about that as I see the ending, with Goku realizing he lost and just reacting with a darn it. He's not angry, he's not sad. It's like he just lost a game of pool with that lifelong friend he got to see again after years. It's not like he just lost a massive fight and died. Clark even comments, "You almost had me there," and it really adds to that vibe. Kind of reminds me of the lyrics from way earlier in the song. Just saying it's okay. Doesn't matter who wins anyway. These two, in the context that we have here, wouldn't really have cared who won. The point was the fight, of getting to go one-on-one with one another at their absolute best and seeing how it'd go. It was fun for them. Both of them. And that's what matters in the end. Goku laughing as he says, "Yeah, it sure was," in response to Superman saying that it was fun, and then he proclaims that he'll be stronger next time, is very sweet. Especially when Clark follows it up with a, "I look forward to it." as the two look upon the endless sea of various other realities of themselves. It's really nice because this is them. This is Son Goku. This is Clark Kent. These are those characters that I've loved since childhood. The ones who have inspired me in different ways. The ones who have meant so much to me for so many years. This is what they always deserved. And after years of improving themselves and growing as a show, Death Battle was finally able to give these powerful titans the fight that they truly deserved. Then comes the ending. Not of the fight, but of the episode, where Wiz and Boomstick dive into why Superman won, measuring the various feats of Goku and Superman against one another to justify their result, which is detailed and fantastic. But it's near the end that truly did it for me, that truly cemented this as my favorite episode of Death Battle. Because Wiz starts to talk about what this fight means, what it represents, how some people see this debate, or could see this debate, as one of a clash of ideals or culture. He starts to question the nature of this show, wondering if what they're doing has any value, or if they're merely just stripping away the artistic value and meaning of these characters by putting them into this vacuum of violence. He starts to question the nature of versus debating. And it comes to a head when he blatantly asks himself, what's the point? He said so himself, art is about interpretation, so what point is there in Death Battle if what they say isn't definitive fact? What's the point? And then Boomstick says this.
Because it's fun, Wiz! Damn it, man! There's more than one way to appreciate something! We're having a great time talking about awesome characters and slamming action figures together, and that's okay!
Yeah, you're right.
And it's there, at that moment, that this became my favorite episode. Boomstick saying without any irony that there's more than one way to appreciate something is something palpable. It's something I think everyone needs to hear and understand. Time and time again, I've seen people do stuff like throw around that one Stan Lee quote that they don't understand. See Nemesis's brilliant video on that if you want more context. As well as people just acting like the simple act and partaking of versus debating is somehow taking away from the art of these characters, while ignoring the fact that many people dislike when characters are reduced to just power sets in versus debating. People debate these kinds of things because these are characters they love. These are characters that we love to think about. We love to think about how our favorite characters would interact. We fantasize about the stories that could be told with them together and the heights a fight between them could reach. It's the same reason why crossover shipping is popular. It's fun to imagine characters that we love together, sharing moments together, things that would never happen in a canon space, and expressing our own creativity by writing those ideas out and discussing them with friends, discussing them with like-minded individuals, and sharing that. It's like Boomstick says, we're having fun talking about awesome characters and we're slamming action figures together. And that's okay. You aren't ruining art or missing the point by partaking in this kind of conversation. You're simply having fun and expressing your love for these characters and their worlds in your own way. And this also means, by the nature of art and what I'm saying, not everyone is going to get it, and that's also okay. Like Boomstick said, there's more than one way to appreciate something. And that also means that everyone enjoys things differently. Not everyone is going to like versus discussions or get it, and that's fine. They can enjoy these things in their own way, and as long as they aren't belittling you for how you enjoy them, then it shouldn't matter. And you definitely shouldn't be belittling them for not getting it. I get that that's a hard lesson to learn, because we feel like we have to prove ourselves to people, to defend the things we love, and convince everyone that we meet to like the things that we like in the way that we like them. But we don't have to do that. For example, I love Kingdom Hearts. I have so many videos on that topic, where I spent hours going on and on about every little thing that I love in these games. I bring it up in videos that aren't even about it all the time. It bleeds into almost every single aspect of my life, to the point where friends of mine think that it's my religion, or they joke about it. I'm not sure if they're joking at this point. And it's something that's very connected to me as a person. But does that mean that everyone I know has to enjoy it in the way that I do? Or even enjoy it at all? No. No, it doesn't. And that's been a really hard lesson for me to learn, if I'm being honest. It's a topic that means a lot to me, so I get super defensive about it. I get angry with people at times, and it's caused me a lot of problems that I could have avoided if I had learned this lesson and internalized it sooner. So, something we all need to remember is to just focus on ourselves. If you're enjoying yourself, if you see the merit, the value, the love, the art, then that's all that matters. And that applies to everything. Who cares if there's someone out there that doesn't enjoy what you enjoy? That doesn't suddenly make you wrong for liking it or for seeing so much in it that they just don't. It's like Wiz said, fiction, and by extension art, relies on interpretation. And if you truly believe in something, then there's gotta be a reason for that. I started making videos to give myself something to do, to distract myself from the worst period of my life. And now, it's given me something truly special. It's given me a platform where I can share my feelings, my truth, and my thoughts with an audience willing to lend their ears and hear me out. I know not everyone in my life sees the merits in a show like Death Battle. They see it as cringe nerd shit that people take too seriously. But that's just not what it is to me. What it is to me is a show that I've loved and enjoyed for years. A show I've had so much beef with too. And a show that's given me so much. So very much. I remember watching Harry Potter vs. Luke Skywalker while waiting for an Amazon package, and then, when it arrived, talking to the mailman about it like a goofy little 12-year-old. Because I was a goofy little 12-year-old at that point. I remember how happy I was seeing Peach beat Zelda in that episode, to the point where I didn't even clock how awful the analysis sections of that episode were. I remember rewatching the show's back catalog while waiting for new episodes to come out. I remember debating Cloud vs. Link's result with my sister so many times because she just couldn't accept any reality where Cloud lost. I remember all the admittedly awful jokes at Mikey's expense in the TMNT Battle Royale flying over my head as a child. I remember Dante vs. Bayonetta coming out and my silly little teen self somehow thinking Bayonetta would win and having to swallow my pride when she didn't. I remember being an 18-year-old Power Rangers fan and enjoying Megazord vs. Voltron with its many YouTube voice cameos I recognized, like MatPat, Space Hamster, and PBG. I remember complaining about Optimus Prime's characterization in Optimus vs. Gundam. I remember laughing so hard at Mario tearing off his shirtless body to reveal his regular clothes underneath with my ex. I remember that same ex getting really excited when Dark Spyro showed up in Spyro vs. Crash. I remember being really excited for Danny Phantom vs. Jake Long because I really liked both of those shows growing up. I remember going into Yoda vs. King Mickey, knowing that Mickey would win, and cheering when I was correct, loving how that fight ended. I remember raging at Madara beating Aizen just as well as I remember crying as Saitama vs. Popeye pulled genuine emotions out of me with its story. I remember every single episode of Season 9 and my reactions to each announcement. I remember the brilliance of Cole vs. Alex's storytelling. I remember watching Scooby vs. Courage with my boyfriend, and us just loving every second of our favorite cartoon dogs being done just right. I remember talking about Rick vs. Doctor with my Doctor Who loving mother. I remember the emotions I felt with the somber conclusions of Vader vs. Obito or Guts vs. Dimitri. And I remember watching Goku vs. Superman. I remember watching the first one as a 13-year-old kid, thinking it was so cool that they were voiced by the creators I liked, and seeing them go at it in such a way that was unlike any other episode of the show. I remember being annoyed by Goku vs. Superman 2 in ways that I just couldn't properly articulate at 16. And I remember, at 24, watching Goku vs. Superman 3, setting in stone, that I truly love this show, and that had become so much more than what it was when it started. The story, the characterization, that felt truly at home, and that score accenting those emotions. Everything about it. Death Battle's special to me. Through the ups and the downs, it's something that's given me hours of discussion with many people that I care about. Going on and on about it with my friends and my boyfriend. It's art, and art evokes emotion. Art is self-expression. Art is a conversation between the artist and the audience. Art is so many things. And I can tell you, While it may not seem like it, Death Battle is art. So many talented writers, animators, actors, and musicians all coming together to create what is essentially fan fiction at such a scale that fan fiction writers can only imagine. It's amazing. And I mean, what is fan fiction if not a labor of love for the art that you enjoy? The art you value so much that you can't help but express that love. Art you love so much that you want to explore those worlds and spend more time with its characters and grace them with your own brand of creativity to do that. And just like any other piece of art, it's subjective. Not everyone likes it, and that's okay. They're just as valid as you are for liking it, even if what they're saying is kind of dumb sometimes. So go ahead. Keep debating who would win in a fight against who. Share your fan-made thumbnails with your friends. Make that versus fan art of two characters fighting in different ways and poses. Do your funny equations as you try to scale two completely different universes against each other. Keep on debating. Death Battle didn't invent versus debating. Not by a long shot. It was already a part of nerd culture before Death Battle was even an idea. But Death Battle absolutely popularized it. It's kept that flame alive for years. It's inspired other versus shows and has forged so much in that time. And I'm happy that it's got a bright future ahead of it after what seemed like the end. Rising like a phoenix with the help of this community, with multiple exciting episodes to look forward to. I even helped with the Kickstarter. I gave this show money because I love it, because it means so much to me. It has so much value to me. And I didn't want to lose it. But I was such a small part of the large whole that made sure that its future was bright. And whatever that future brings, all I can say is, I look forward to it. Thank you, Ben Singer, Chad James, everyone else at Death Battle. Thank you for everything.